Welcome to the H series of webinars. This series is aimed at new and aspiring sheep producers to give them a step up into the Queensland sheep industry. This harvesting webinar is part 7 of the series and explores the basics of wool handling and clip preparation. This webinar was delivered by AUX Wool Classer Registrar Fiona Raleigh on the 26th of August 2020. This is clip 4 of 10 and covers wool contamination.
Okay, the other contamination that's of major importance to the wool industry is pigmented wool. So we're going to look at this in a few different ways. So we've got the pigmentation that might happen in our white wool sheep, so our merinos, where we have the incidence of black spots. So if we have the odd black sheep within the mob or sheep that have obvious black spots, draft them off and shear them last after the white wool sheep have been shorn. Make sure the board's swept up or white wool's been pressed up and removed from the board, and then you can shear those sheep that are affected by pigmentation last. And also it's best practice to cull those sheep or rattle them as a shearer finds a black spot so they can be removed from the mob. Now the requirements of the code of practice for the classer when there's a black spot found in a fleece is that they must remove that black spot completely, and the best thing to do with that is to throw the black spot into the rubbish bin. Then the fleece is to be removed in its entirety and it's put into a clearly labelled butt. This is really important to make sure that's labelled well. We have found over time that sometimes these fleeces that contain some pigmentation that have been left lying in the shed can look white because the black spot's small or has been removed. They can find their way back into a main fleece line, so it's really important that they're clearly identified and removed right away from all other white wool. So the other pigmentation that we need to talk about is that from shedding breeds. So if you're a grower that's also running shedding breeds, you've got the risk of pigmentation and medullation. You get fibre transfer from paddocks and yards, sheds and transporting and mating. So if you actually see that pigmentation and medullation on the surface of the fleece, it must be declared and described. If I go back to right to the beginning when I was talking about risk, the code of practice is about identifying risk to our customers. So if you run shedding breeds, you must identify that risk in your declaration and in your description. Best practice, of course, is to have a wool cutout when you've shorn your white wool sheep and then press it all up and then shear your shedding breeds. It's vital that this information is communicated to the wool classer so the wool classer can describe the wool correctly. Of a lesser importance these days is the contamination from chemicals. All the chemicals that are registered for use on sheep now are safe if they're applied within the withholding period. So the withholding period has two aspects to it. One is for sheep handling, which would be just for drenching and moving sheep around. And the other withholding period is a harvest withholding period, and they may not be the same. So always follow the directions. Very important for workplace health and safety that chemicals are not used inside the shed. We have had some incidents of backline remaining on the sheep, even though it's supposed to fade out after time. So that should be removed if it's present still on the sheep. Which brings me to the next sort of contamination and discoloration that we can have, and that's from sheep marking substances. There's often a little confusion around this. So Cyromark and those paint brands that we use on sheep are registered for use on wool, but they must be applied off shears. So they have 12 months of weathering for that colour to be faded out. There are instances when it's been applied too heavily or the greasy tip on the wool means that branding fluid still remains quite strong after 12 months. So it is a requirement that all branding fluids be removed, even though they are registered for use on wool. As a grower, be mindful where you place that brand on the fleece so that the wool harvesting team know where to locate it. If you need to use a spray rattle or a dry rattle prior to shearing, make sure you just limit that to the nose of the sheep and don't put it on the wool. Just as an aside too, if you have a prime lamb enterprise, try not to mark the fleece but prior to sale. If you're identifying your sheep for sale, also don't spray the fleece because those skins have a value. I also found from experience as a classer that the choice of colour is important for your situation. Depending on your dust type or the tip type on your sheep, some of those purple colours and reds can be quite difficult to see. Blue and green seem to be better. Of course, non-wool contamination has always been an issue in the wool industry, so it's very important that we practice very good shed hygiene. Again, let's get ourselves into that situation of quality assurance, not quality control. So we're not taking out things that we we find in the wool, what we're doing is we're ensuring that they're not in the wool to start off with. Paddock and shed hygiene, I can't emphasize enough how important that is. Pieces of wire just from a workplace health and safety issue. But baling twine, we have had complete consignments of growers' wool rejected from sale because of pieces of baling twine from hand feeding sheep. Every single lot of wool that was offered for sale had baling twine in it, and no one wanted to buy it. It was a no-buy situation. Baling twine is very unappealing to buyers. The other thing, always have a good supply of newspaper for bale dividers for bulk class bales. Absolutely nothing else should be used for dividing bales of wool. We have had incidences of fertilizer bag being used with good intentions that wool will be looked at the wool store, but it has found its way right through to our end users. So only newspaper for bale dividers in bulk class bales. Also, we have had a few incidents of dog hair making some lots of wool non-conforming. So we don't sort of discriminate against what sort of dark fibre it is. Dogs laying in wool bins can impact on your wool to the point where it's non-conforming at sale. So dogs out of the shed.
Thank you for watching this short clip. For more information, please visit www.leadingsheep.com.au.